Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us once again Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
Glad to
and
be here.
We often start our interchange by soliciting some clever comment from you. Have you one stored up for the occasion, or?
Yes.
Yes.
The feathers are easy. It's the tar that's hard to get off.
Okay. Well, all right. I'll let the audience brood about that. We'll think about that.
Yes.
We'll think about that. Okay. Well, I hope you haven't had experience with that, but you.
Luckily, I've evaded that particular form of humiliation. But
well, that's good.
Yes.
That's great. So there are lots of things to talk about, and maybe we could discuss the great, extraordinary election that's going to take place in the fall. And the fact that Georgia is one of the 7 battleground states, meaning that the country is so evenly divided that the election is going to come down to just a very few states. So if you happen to live in Florida, well, you can just rest easy. No one's going to bother you too much there. However, we're in a state where tremendous amounts of money and information and disinformation is going to happen. It's also going to be challenged by new uses of AI, the way that people are trying to get your vote harvesting, early balloteering, and the Trump cadre is alleging we're going to have some kind of malfeasance in the electoral process. We have that to think about. Can you make any comments about all of that? I mean, what do you think awaits the citizens of the state?
Well, I've found that historians should never predict the future. They're usually very bad at it.
They might determine the present, though.
Yes. I do think it is a very bad sign for our Republican system of government, little r Republican, that there is so much attempt being made to cast doubt on the integrity of the process. And if Trump were sitting here in your place right now, he'd say, "I'm not casting doubt. I'm telling you the way it is. I'm revealing the truth," which makes things, I think, even worse. That if the system is rigged, then it's a lot easier, I think, for people to justify acting outside or in disregard of the system, and you see things like you did on January the 6th.
On the other hand, the Democrats allege that President Trump wishes to destroy democracy, and for that reason, anything to stop him is fair game, including the media losing its objectivity, not being really regular journalists, but basically trying to stop the equivalent of Adolf Hitler. I mean, this terrible person that's going to open concentration camps, become dictator.
By his own admission.
Well, we could discuss that. We could get into a discussion about what's real and what's not real, and kind of what I want to take the conversation into. We're having a little preliminary interchange here. Is just how do we parse our way through the forthcoming experience when millions and millions of dollars are going to be put into the state to really control the country, 350 million people, in some ways determine the fate of the world, if I could say it like that. There are many, many bad and good possibilities in the future. So if you're let's say, a regular human being, you're a voter, you're walking around, you're enjoying eating a hamburger, maybe you drink a beer and watch football games, what should you be aware of now in how your decisions are going to be made?
Well, I really can't give you an easy answer on that. I do think that, as you have often noted in the past, I mean, newspapers have been partisan since the very beginning. I mean, it was the fact that the printing press came to Europe that that spawned the notion of censorship with the church creating the
Yes,
index
right.
of banned books. And the idea is that there is some information that is dangerous for society.
Only licensed
That's-
printing
yes,
presses. You
yes.
couldn't you couldn't print
Yes.
things that were not controlled or licensed.
Yes. You see the Sedition Act of 1798 in our own country, the fact that the newspapers were extraordinarily partisan back then, and they're extraordinarily partisan today, but today they usually claim not to be partisan. My comment
Do they?
about yeah,
Do
they do. I mean, Fox News, fair and balanced.
Is that
their
a news? I
catchphrase.
know, but is that
Yeah.
a newspaper? I mean, in other words, what another comment to interject this is, newspapers have a certain, although their language, I don't doubt that, was quite partisan and fiery. There's still a little restraint that happens when you sit there and just pick up the newspaper and read something. It's not as all-encompassing as watching a TV show. It doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't have the same emotional impact. And there was a degree of literacy that would be necessary to be influenced by it. So I'll just say that. But the immediate power of the media now is so much greater.
Well, yeah, you cut me off. That's where I was headed.
Oh, well,
yeah. So
well,
that,
pardon-moi.
Yeah,
I didn't mean
that-
to.
But that the modern press, once you get to the high-speed printing press and then radio and then television networks, they start to assume an air of professionalism that you did not see in the earlier ages. And so once again, I quote Fox News, and I think that Fox News was a good corrective to what is now disparagingly called the mainstream media, because it did give an alternate point of view. But their catchphrase is fair and balanced. Now, on the other side, you have the New York Times claiming to be the nation's news of record,
Yes.
newspaper of record. But my argument is, if you have to tell somebody that you are fair and balanced, you probably are not. Just in the same way that when you tell someone you're humble. But yes, modern media is far more pervasive. That if you're listening or hearing or watching news, you're much more a passive recipient. It can modern advertising styles, modern statistics, the Madison Avenue people can get inside your psyche and figure out what sells, bypass your defenses, and now with ChatGPT and similar AIs being released more or less into the wild, it's going to become exponentially worse to the point that I really believe, and I've seen hints of this for about 20 years or so, but now it's become far, far worse. I think the great crisis of participatory government in the 21st century, and one of the great crises of civilization as a whole, is going to be a crisis of epistemology. How do you know what is true? And that is going to be an extremely difficult problem for us to deal with.
Well, yeah, we can do mathematics. There are systems by which we can sort of determine 2 + 2 is 4 within this system. So there are ways to have something like that, and there are ways to get into scientific truth. And in general, I think this is a point to make. The whole idea of free speech is that people are possessing truth and they're trying to illuminate the room. And if you stop them from illuminating the room, the world would be worse for it. So you have to let people do that. On the other hand, another part of speech is kind of ego assertion. So it's, if you've seen debates, they're like two people fighting. There's not often so much difference between, quote, a presidential debate and people in a slugging match. So neither participant is, well, often is the case, is particularly trying to illuminate the room. He's trying for his
heat rather than light.
Yes, but so yes, heat rather than light. But so we see that, and to go through the point, and maybe this is connected with the adversarial system, if I make this comment about the way the law courts work and the way the American I'll segue to that slightly. So, okay, we're going to have two opponents in the courtroom, and we're each going to present our side. We'll go back and forth. We'll challenge each other, and out of that, the jury can come up with some degree of truth. Well, and you'd like to imagine that's what's going on, but if really what happens are people are getting pre-digested opinions depending on where they get their information. So it's pretty interesting, really, if you switch back and forth between the TV stations. You can see, I don't know what CNN wants to talk about, maybe, I don't know, Trump criminal trial, and you can watch Fox or their companion networks, and it's Hunter Biden, is he going to prison, or this is a picture of, I don't know, Hunter Biden's big car, or on and on, or here's a picture of whatever it is. And actually, these issues going back and the story with Trump is all his many issues, and it gets into character assassination. I don't know if that's the right word, but a character assassination, on hominem attacks on the different candidates, presumably casting doubt on their character. I think you and I can agree that we have a good insight into the character right now of the two major applicants for the White House. However, the actual policy arrangements, I wonder how much we really get into. That would be an appropriate thing if you're out there, you're a voter, and you hear another story about, here's somebody's old girlfriend has emerged, or here's some allegation that someone stole money, or on and on. And what are the actual issues of consequence? And there doesn't seem to be much of discussion about that, more or less. The national debt, the role of immigration in the country, really a big discussion of that. The world's population growth, it's out there. We have climate, we have gasoline, we have inflation, we have the national debt. And there doesn't seem to be much of a neutral discussion about that. And probably one of the important things for the voter, in my opinion, would be which of the candidates is going to, and party and his associates, going to take care of the biggest issues out there, the biggest ones. Maybe that's national debt, I don't know, maybe that's war. Who's going to keep the peace? Who's going to handle the national debt? Who's going to make life civil and nice? Instead, we're getting people get pre-digested opinions from. They don't try and listen to the other side, which is a painful process.
Well, it's
very
the echo
difficult.
chamber, yes. As a teacher, I face this all the time. I mean, there are mechanisms that are in place if someone is so inclined. I will mention one that comes to mind immediately is All Sides Media, and I think that's either allsides.com or allsidesmedia.com. And if you go there are a couple of very interesting things going on. First of all, they will cover a news story, the same news story, but give you 2 or 3 different sources for that story, and it will be ranked on the political spectrum. So one will be from the right, one will be from the left, and one will be more or less from the center. And you may ask, well, how do they get these rankings? And that's the second interesting thing, is that the readers themselves, it's sort of like a group collaboration like Wikipedia, will vote on the bias of the various news sources. So yes, is it possible to game that out? Would it be possible to get an AI that starts voting over and over again, for instance, for InfoWars and move it to the center? Yes. I don't think that has happened in this case. I'm not saying that it can't happen again in the future. Once again, the crisis of epistemology. But for right now, it's a fairly good source if you want to do that, rather than just get confirmation bias further entrenched and read things coming out of your own echo chamber. And people don't like doing that, you're right.
Right, and I mean, we can discuss that a little bit. One of the things in the BBC is that I don't know, as midnight approaches, they have different, here are the newspapers coming out tomorrow, And in London, for instance, I don't know, there are 6 or 7 national newspapers of different persuasions. And hold up, well, here's what the Times are talking about, and here's what the Guardian wants to talk about. And indeed, the choice, I mean, I think this is an important issue, is what do you want to talk about? Let's suppose you're a neutral, or you try and be neutral, and your idea is not to use inflammatory language. And then what is it you'd like to talk about? Well, the talking points of my particular political persuasion. So I don't know, maybe, the poorest border in the Southwest, that'll be what we'll talk about. And the other side may pick anything. Generally, I think they pick the knavery or perceived knavery of President Trump. I mean, that seems to be now we're going to discuss whatever. And it's not like, the reason I would say this, that the media picks these stories is they're profit generators. So if you're, and indeed I've heard it said that, the liberal media likes having President Trump as a punching bag, so to speak.
Because he sells.
He sells, then they can
Yes.
make a lot of money. So you're there as a newscaster, well, my bonus was down last quarter. Gee, people aren't watching my show. Well, now all those people that want to know is Trump going to prison or whatever, they're going to have, they'll now watch my show, will make more money. So it's good for money, and yet the journalistic responsibilities, whatever they are, I mean, are they they cast down a little bit? And I'll now ask this question: what is that seems to be a really important thing is journalism, whatever that is, and the way that's put together. Are they losing their sense of standards, and should they have, I don't know, really pay a lot of attention to their standards of reporting? Should they, so to speak, even get graded by how things are going? I mean, and obviously,
All sides media.
Oh, that's exactly right. Well, that's a good thing. But I don't think this is percolating down to the people on the voters that are going to happen. And I'm just concerned about this. Is we're going to have this bloodbath of competing medias, all kinds of knavery, all kinds of things happening, receiving letters, how we really, really want your vote, how can we get it? And I would say this. In the past, there were some restrictions to people that could vote. I mean, and all of those have been cast aside. And you could ask the question, should citizens vote, for instance? Should they be the only people that can vote? And certainly the idea is they're trying to let non-citizens vote up in urban areas, and maybe not in national elections, but in local elections. And that's gone before the courts. And the idea of literacy was used in the past to prevent Afro-Americans from casting their ballot or making their voice heard. But is that something that might be considered in some ways, some kind of ideas about that? And just to continue along those lines, if you're in a nursing home, I've got patients, I'll be in a nursing home possibly quite soon, who knows? But you're there, and your intellectual abilities have been substantially diminished. I mean, should you be able to vote if you just are quite demented, and then someone comes in and says, "Please sign that your son-in-law comes in and says, "Please sign this." Is there something into that? And the idea is that we have the open doors for everyone to vote. Everybody votes. And the idea being that everyone their rights need to be protected, and that's the way to do it. And also, it's an affirmation of their sense of equality, of their personhood. I understand all that. But is there something that could be done along those lines? And I'll just throw that out. I mean, I'll ask your opinion about it.
Well, yes, I mean, certainly things could be done. I think that you're swimming against the stream
Of
in
course,
several regards.
it's a very contrary viewpoint.
Yeah,
Yes,
that the misuse of the literacy test during the Jim Crow era has very largely poisoned the well in that regard. The French Revolution, I think, has made it impossible for us to turn back the clock. I mean, the strongest argument to letting everyone vote is that everyone has to live with the consequences of the policies that the government enacts. So, whether you're literate, whether you're not, whether you're smart, whether you're stupid, you have to live with the decision that the body politic makes. One approach might be to weight the voting, so everybody gets a basic vote, but the greater stake you have in the system, and the thing that would obviously come to mind is the more property you own, and therefore the more heavily you are affected theoretically by government policy, the more votes you get. But I would argue that property is already disproportionately well overrepresented in electoral circles. So I think that that's a non-starter. Is there fraud? Yeah, of course there's fraud. You're never going to get the perfect system. And I think you can find fraud in most elections. And I think the thing to remember in 2020 is that, yes, there was fraud found, but not enough fraud to come close to have affected the outcome. At least if you listen to all of these state and federal judges, many of them Trump appointees, who had heard challenges. So, yeah, absolutely. If you just look at it in a cold-blooded, rational way, some people do not have, and the nursing home is the good example, the intellectual capacity to vote. But once you start drawing those lines, you're going down a very, very dangerous slope.
Well, that's true, and I'll just yes, that's true. We have to be cautious in our contentious world. I'll make one or two comments. Number one is the idea about giving maybe another vote. I would say not for property, but if you maybe had military service, you've made a contribution somehow to society. Maybe you've not been in prison in the last 20 years, or maybe you pay your taxes routinely. And so there could be some kind of reward for good citizenship. And I don't think that I would, although property, if we got into the whole notion of government and control and citizenship, certainly going back to the early Middle Ages, the idea of property, that's the purpose of the government was to protect that. And so if you didn't have property, you couldn't have the vote, and on and on. And so that's a big part of our evolution of a political system. But having said that, good citizenship might be a way to do it. The other thing I would say is getting into this segueing in for property. One of the things that goes on is basically what economic advantage am I going to have if a particular person wins? And traditionally, I would say, going back a long time, the propertied interest were the people that were controlling the situation, and they want tariffs, no tariffs, whatever. It's going to. If you live in Charleston, we want low tariffs, and if you live in Boston, you want high tariffs, and for economic reasons. Low taxes, that would be one incentive for one group of people. And the other thing, which I think is a substantial consequence, is that the way that capitalism is working, and the way property is working, and particularly in a time of inflation, people that possess property are getting they're getting substantial advantages. If they don't possess property, it's a difficult situation. They're going from paycheck to paycheck, and the way that paychecks increase, it's a hard time keeping up with inflation. So really, inflation is a pretty substantial problem. for anyone wearing a left boot, so to speak. And to continue on the subject, there's an enormous amount of income transference that's taking place that plays itself out enormously in the elections. And the other issue is how powerful and big the government is. So in the past, I don't know what decades we want to go back to, the government was quite Lilliputian, very small, didn't have all this ability, and it was not in the business of really collecting a lot of taxes or redistributing income. And this is a particular issue, I mean, just to go into it, with healthcare. So an enormous amount of the government's responsibilities would be providing healthcare, and healthcare is so expensive that it would be an unusual person that could just totally take care of their healthcare expenses right out of their pocket, particularly as they age. We're getting visits to the doctor every day. So the government has a major role in that, a redistribution of wealth. And so to make the point is that if you really wanted low taxes, maybe you just wouldn't care who's in there if you got low taxes. And if you wanted a big subsidy, you didn't pay taxes and you wanted the government to give you a big subsidy, you would be persuaded by that issue. So that turns out to be quite a thing to say about the democratic process, and that presumably, you'd like to imagine in its highest forms that Thomas Jefferson or whatever were thinking, well, the yeomen are out there, these right-thinking, and I would say Christian males, Caucasian Christian males would find the way to truth, and they would not be influenced by money or anything else. And of course, that's not the case. Maybe it's never been the case. And how do you make the system work with so much self-interest in the middle of this whole game? And would it be reasonable to expect people to vote against their own economic self-interest?
Well, one thing that immediately comes to mind is term limits. I was actually just listening to a story about that driving over, but to back up a little bit, you talk about, for instance, getting extra votes for being a good citizen and not being put in jail. The problem is we live in such a fractious society now when each side really believes that it is going to be the savior of the American system or humanity or human rights or fill in the blank. That the idea of brinksmanship becomes more and more thinkable because you're doing this for a good and worthy cause. So that would, we have seen presidents in the past use the IRS, weaponize the IRS to at least some degree. Nixon, I think, is a clear example of that. There were allegations that Obama did that. And so if you're going to get an extra vote for paying your taxes, we'll just use the IRS to game that system a little bit and keep the vote down from people that we don't want voting too much. Or we will do selective prosecutions, which I know you've been worried about a great deal, for people that we don't want voting too much. So I'm afraid, I mean, in theory, yes, these are great theoretical devices to talk about, but I'm afraid that we are at a juncture that no matter what system you come up with, the entrenched powers would be willing to play around with that some to get the results they wanted.
Well, it seems to me that as we enter this electoral cycle, there are a lot of things that worry me about it, and just the way the voters are going to, you'd hope that there'd be a lot of rational considerations about this important election. And it's not being helped by either party. It's really actually a little disgusting, but maybe humans eat both parties, so they're going to knock off their opponent, and they're just ready to bite the foot of their enemy. And I know you make the point this has always been the case. Is that right?
But the stakes are a lot higher now. that once again government is much more pervasive, and the ability of the media to get past your rational defenses are much stronger, and so I'm not at all sanguine about where this is going to take us. A quick, just a quick postscript here. There's a big blockbuster movie coming out. I can't remember when. I think the next few weeks, called Civil War. About a present-day civil war in the United States. Now, at one level, it takes pains to keep from identifying too much.
Watch that.
I don't either. I've seen
like
the trailers. It takes pains not to align itself with the current red and blue, but even so, you see Americans, an American armed force, shooting at each other. I hope this is not in our future.
And of course, I'll make this comment. I mean, being a senior citizen, and you probably, all these events took place before you came of age, but when the Cold War ended and the U.S. Was victorious, and it was really quite a thing. Our system was, touted, and the Soviet Union, our great enemy, they've got their nuclear weapons. They were just seeming for a long time to be winning the deal. They collapsed, and the country just was pretty much, I won't say dissolved, but close to it. All of their, major generals were giving information to the CIA, all kinds of corrupt issues. People were buying this, doing this. And the size of the country diminished. Its GNP diminished. The whole place blew up. And then we were touting, I thought at the time, what would happen to us, if anything? I mean, are we sort of recessional, Rudyard Kipling, recessional, so to speak, to quote that poem, but do we have a similar danger here? And are we seeing something playing itself out? And the idea that, to me, there's no more reprehensible, horrible event than another civil war. And it's up to the politicians to prevent that. And so when I see a politician that's tossing gasoline around and lighting matches, that's a really bad thing. And I have to say, this pouring gasoline around and throwing matches was not in evidence, let's say, in Gore versus Bush or back in the day. There were two people, or Bill Clinton, whatever, they'd throw punches, but they certainly were avuncular enough to want peace to prevail, and the safety of the country was high in their agenda, and I'm going to make this comment, basically expunging wickedness, whatever that is. Yes. Clean the Augean stable of America, an evil country. That's bad talk, and I don't like it, I'll say that.
Well, I was very much of age when that was happening.
That was a little joke.
Yeah, so, no, but I will say that my earliest memories of America were very disturbing because they were of the Vietnam era and Watergate. And I remember as a child, being taught patriotism and civics in elementary school, and that we were supposed to be proud of our country. And I remember,
well, I still am.
Based on the vibes I'm getting, there didn't seem to be much to be proud of.
That's right.
So yes,
we're reinterpreting American history and just saying, well, there are humans that live here, and they've gone to the right, they've gone to the left, they struggle up the mountain. And we need to be proud of their struggles and efforts to get to the top of the mountain, as opposed to almost anywhere else. And I think we need to put the whole world in perspective. This is the place to be, in my opinion, as far as happiness, contentment, possibilities. I can't think of another place to be.
Well, although the latest polls show that contentment of Americans is dropping precipitously, and a lot of that is tied into the inability to make a living wage. That not many people can make it to the top of that mountain or even fairly high up the mountain. So, opportunity sounds great, but is there really that much opportunity for that many people?
Well, it's more of it's not just an economic litmus paper about whether the top of the mountain. It's the whole ideology of the place, and indeed, levels of dissatisfaction, problems exist everywhere. but there's a lot of corrective arrangements in this country. There are a lot of really great possibilities, and if you look at the system here, in every way, the economic arrangements that are generated, the general sense of possibilities here as contrasted with wherever else you want to live, I think it's at the top. And it's true enough that anyone that has moments of dissatisfaction, anyone. Well,
Perhaps.
all right, on that note, Buck, thanks once again for your comments here. Always delighted to see you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Have a good day. Thank you.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.